Thank you, Frank.
Reported when we met last in London in October, Committee A has been conducting an inquiry over the past year into the implementation of the Good Friday and St Andrews Agreement. The Committee has been extremely busy on this inquiry and has held a large volume of meetings and evidence-taking sessions. During the course of this inquiry, the Committee met with a wide range of witnesses, including the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Theresa Villiers MP, the Joint Secretaries of the British-Irish Intergovernmental Secretariat, the British-Irish Council Secretariat and the North-South Ministerial Council Joint Secretariat. The Committee also held meetings with the Chief Constable of the PSNI, Matt Baggett, members of the Parades Commission, the Joint Oireachtas Committee on the implementation of the Good Friday Agreement, officials from the Irish Government, the Northern Ireland Office and the Northern Ireland Executive, community representatives and members of the Northern Ireland political parties. A written submission from the SDLP was also received. The Committee held its final meeting on the inquiry in late January in Dublin, meeting the Taoiseach, Eamon Gilmore TD, and the Oireachtas Joint Committee on the implementation of the Good Friday Agreement. The Committee held lengthy discussions on the working of the democratic institutions in Northern Ireland and bodies such as the North-South Ministerial Council, the British-Irish Council, the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference, the North-South Parliamentary Association and indeed BIPA itself. The Committee also considered values, guiding principles laid out in the agreements, namely power sharing, human rights, parity of esteem, support for the rule of law and for the devolved institutions and continued shared responsibility of the two governments to act as guarantors of the agreement. I would like to thank all those who gave their time to speak to the Committee on this very important issue. The recommendations we have included in the report are intended to address outstanding issues in a balanced way, taking into account the various views on the issues concerned. In order to stimulate discussion and debate on the current state of play regarding provisions of the agreements, our work has produced what is the first review of these agreements. I think it's very, very fitting that this Assembly should take a leading role in this regard, and I hope that the plenary today will take note of this historic report as an important contribution to debate on the matters of political importance and public interest on these islands. We hope that this will serve as a reminder of and a testament to the challenging but very worthwhile work of peace building that has gone over in the last 20 years, and that's something that our committee were very conscious of. Is we were dealing with various groups and various people whom have put huge sacrifice and huge work in the last 20 years, and they certainly, the role sometimes hasn't been officially acknowledged, and I'd like to officially acknowledge them here today. Looking back over the 2 decades, it's clear that these two agreements, they've had a significant and transformative effect on security, politics, economic and social opportunity on this island and in Northern Ireland most particularly. They came about as a result of a sustained effort over a number of years by the British and Irish governments and the Northern Ireland parties. This effort has identified shared principles and values which has formed the foundation of a set of institutions and bodies which has shaped not only relations in Northern Ireland but also North-South and British-Irish relations. These agreements taken together, as I believe they must be, set out the guiding principles for peace, stability and reconciliation in Northern Ireland. Their journey towards the implementation is just that. It's a journey, and it requires continuous commitment and effort, and I recognise that not all members support unconditionally each element of both agreements if taken individually. However, it is not the purpose of our inquiry to re-evaluate the constituent elements of either agreement. Our aim was to set out clearly what elements remain to be implemented. It is the Committee's view that, as is the case in any comprehensive political agreement, implementation of all provisions is essential to the integrity and balance of the whole. The report finds that the full potential of the Good Friday and St Andrews Agreement has yet to be reached, and we call on all parties to the agreement to maintain the momentum to ensure that all outstanding provisions are implemented in their totality. The recent political talks in the North Ireland chaired by Dr Haas and Dr Megan O'Sullivan, it further highlights that there are outstanding issues which need to be addressed and agreed upon the journey once again is ongoing. This has been a long and complex inquiry, and I would like to recognise the hard work and contribution by the committee to this report, and which will indulge in chairs. I now invite any committee members who wish to say a few words on this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. Firstly, Paul.
Thank you very much indeed, Co-Chair. And someone who was heavily involved in the Good Friday Agreement, I want to congratulate Frank and his committee members on what I think is a very full and a very sensitive report, because the issues aren't easy ones. And I think that they've done a really good job of work on this, and I hope that all of us will be able to appreciate it. I just want to make reference very briefly to 3 different points. The first one is about the need for regular reporting on the implementation of the agreement. And I think this is probably the most important recommendation of the committee. That is to say that from time to time, the 2 governments and the Northern Ireland Executive and Assembly looks at the implementation of the Good Friday and St Andrews Agreement, but also, of course, as to whether the parts of the Good Friday Agreement need to be modified or changed in any way, because after all it was agreed nearly 16 years ago. And there is a clause in the Good Friday Agreement which says from time to time you need to look at it to see whether it needs updating or changing. And I'm not quite sure that's been done enough, and the committee is to be congratulated on highlighting that. The second one is on the Bill of Rights, which has been discussed in this body on many occasions. And what I was particularly impressed with was the sensible and sensitive way in which the committee has made its recommendation. It's not an easy one, particularly for the unionist community in Northern Ireland, but I think the way in which recommendation number 8 is phrased is very good, and we must keep reminding colleagues in both governments, who are after all the guarantees of the agreement, and the Northern Ireland Assembly, that this still is unfinished work. And finally, a good try, and I hope it works, the issue on the British Irish Council and the British Irish Parliamentary Assembly, that is to say, recommendation 7, we'll keep on trying and hope they take some notice of us.
Thank you, Paul. May.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Just to say, as a member of Committee A, I want to thank Frank and the rest of the committee that really there was a lot of work put into this report, a lot of visits, a lot of listening to people. And in Northern Ireland, sometimes it's not very easy to understand what's going on because you hear such conflicting views. But I think the committee on the whole and the chair and the supporting staff have done a great job in the report they've made. I just want to make a couple of quick things. As you will read through the report, there is some outstanding issues, and Paul Murphy's already referred to the Bill of Rights. There's the Civic Forum, there's the Irish and Scotch language. We could go on. These things need to be looked at. And for me, the issues that need to be looked at now are more from a community point of view, which can be understood by the community. I understand all the big things of getting the Assembly running and getting the First and Deputy First and all that into place. But I think we're now at a position where we have settled down in Northern Ireland in the Assembly, and I think these issues need to be looked at. Certainly the past is a big issue. We still have a deeply segregated community, both in housing and education, and that will be one of the biggies. I had hoped that the Haas talks might bring some fulfilment to that, but that wasn't possible. But I think it's still ongoing, and I think that work has to be taken on. For the committee, as I say, I want to thank them, but this report is certainly just a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Paul.
Thank you much, Chairman. I would like simply, as a member of the committee too, to support very fully everything that Frank has said and outlined here. We went out of our way, I believe, to consult all of the interested parties and stakeholders, and as has been said, we had many meetings in Belfast, London and here. We were conscious of the need for sensitivity. I think that was achieved, and has been said already, referred to by Paul Murphy. And Paul is right on that. And the updating and changing to which he referred, well, that wasn't really our job, obviously. That's for others. But as May has said, the past is a matter that is ongoing, and, you know, hopefully the parties in the North will manage to revisit the items that they dealt with Haas and achieve something in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick.
One of the, just to follow on from what Paul Murphy said in relation to implementation, and I know I've said it here before, and I've said it at the committee meetings as well, and I want to thank Frank for the work that he has done in relation to the compiling of the report. But it seems to me that there is a major issue in relation to implementation as regards whose actual responsibility it is to monitor progress on implementation, because Paul Murphy is quite right. The agreement is now 16 years old, and there are still some substantial issues that are left unfinished. And one of the issues that's left unfinished is the Bill of Rights, obviously, and the Civic Forum. But there's also an issue in relation to the status of the Irish language in Northern Ireland. And I think that status was given a major boost during the Queen's visit to Ireland, when her opening remarks at the state dinner were delivered in the Irish language. And I think that there is an opportunity to address that going forward. But I think one of the key findings of our report was, whether it was the Northern Ireland institutions, in Dublin or indeed in London, that implementation and who is actually ultimately responsible for driving the whole process forward, when it bogs down, and we've seen it in the Hess talks, that there needs to be a greater willingness, I think, on all sides, particularly on the sides of the guarantors, to ensure that stumbling blocks are gotten over and that the agreement is implemented in full. That was blatantly obvious to all of the stakeholders, particularly people within communities who feel, in a lot of cases, that the Good Friday or Belfast Agreement has left them behind.
Okay, thank you. Pascal?
Thank you, Co-Chair. I'm not a member of the committee, but I did want to take the opportunity of complimenting Frank and his committee on the very important and essential work that they're doing. But to me, it may seem like somewhat simplistic, and I was particularly taken by Baroness Blood's comments about the community element of this. It seems to me that progress could be deemed to be made when the first of the peace walls, so-called peace walls, are dismantled. I had the occasion of visiting Belfast again recently, and I took the opportunity of going along the original dividing wall in West Belfast. And for those of you who haven't experienced it, in this day and age, it is a horrible, horrible monument that should be dismantled, and then there would be real peace. And I'm wondering whether, in the context of the report and all of the witness evidence that you took, whether that element of it came up. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of what's in these reports are about the institutional relationships. But the institutions are working. It's at community level that the real problem is. And unless and until we grasp that reality, well, then there's not going to be any movement in terms of bringing the two communities together. And it is a lasting legacy to all politicians, and it's a challenge to all politicians, that these walls remained. More of them were built since the Good Friday Agreement than were not, than were taken down. But the main one, to me, is the most symbolic one of all in West Belfast. And when that comes down, or when there's moves for that to come down, and when there are confidence-building measures among the two divided communities, well, then I think we can see real progress. So I'm just wondering whether the focus for the committee in the future should be to try and generate more cooperation and reconciliation at community level, rather than worrying about what the institutions are doing. Because I have to say, as a southerner, it seems to me that both political parties in power in the north are living in their own comfort zones. The two of them are quite happy to extend their tribal vote and for to continue in government and sit in the seats in Stormont together. But from this perspective, they haven't done very much in terms of promoting cross-community relations. It's the people on the ground, the non-elected activists. They're the people that are doing it in the main, not the politicians. And that's the real challenge.
Thank you. Were you indicating? Yep.
Sean Crowe. Yes, just a couple of things in relation to the outstanding issues in relation to the Good Friday Agreement itself. The Good Friday Agreement talks in terms of peaceful means and good faith implementation, peaceful means of resolving differences on political issues and our opposition to any use of the threat of force by other political or any other political purposes. And given, I suppose, the widespread intimidation and surrounding some of the illegal protests around the issues of parades and flags, I suppose this is one issue that we certainly need to look at. The declaration of support also contains a pledge that we will, in good faith, work to ensure the success of each and every one of the arrangements under the agreement, and I suppose you could argue that maybe that hasn't been fully implemented in relation to it. I suppose one of the outstanding matters in relation to, people talked about the Bill of Rights for the North and the All-Ireland Charter of Fundamental Rights, but it also talks in terms of, in relation to this state, that that there be similar organisations, and I suppose recently with the controversy over GSOC and so on, we've seen the difference between this jurisdiction and the one in the North in relation to that. So it also talks about an All-Ireland Consultative Forum, a civic forum, all positive things that, to get people actually talking and discussing about real issues in relation to it. I don't agree with the previous speaker in relation to me saying that politicians haven't been making efforts. I think that's an actual myth to some extent, and this nonsense of people sticking to their own tribal background. It may make good copy in relation to, and maybe for lazy journalists, but the reality is, if you go into communities, you will find parties from a lot of parties there, from all backgrounds, talking to each other, talking in communities. And I suppose one of the things that we have found within the Good Friday committee, the implementation committee, is that we've actually gone into communities, those who were at, the North Belfast, where there was the highest amount of people killed during the Troubles and so on. And it's not only local community activists, it's politicians that are in there as well. You could argue that we would like to see more of that happening. We'd like to see more leadership on the ground and so on. But the reality is it's actually happening, and it's happening every day. And I just think this negative message that people put out all the time is not helpful to anything, and it's certainly not helpful to the process itself.
Thank you. One final comment? Yep, sure.
Thank you very much for letting me in. I partially agree with both the previous speakers, but we do, first of all, congratulate everyone up at Stormont for what they are trying to do and getting it somewhere. But we are stuck with a system that does need continual review so that we get opposition and we get some form of change into the government. And I'm slightly disappointed not to see that reflected in this report. We need to see some form of review and change so that what we have there after the St Andrews Agreement actually does change and lead towards a better form of government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for all those comments, and I'll now ask Frank to wind up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I do appreciate the contributions, and these are contributions that we discussed within our committee, and certainly they were raised with a lot of the people that we met. I think when you just look at the language, we did notice that there's gaps, for want of a word, in the implementation of the agreements, and we're calling on all parties to maintain momentum, and certainly the momentum that was created under the Haas proposals. And when people are talking about the Civic Forum kept coming up quite a lot, and I think it's very much a worthy idea, and it certainly we feel the Civic Forum could be of major benefit to all the parties. The formal reporting mechanism, this is something we felt that wasn't to the forefront of a lot of the parties, and we felt that the formal reporting mechanism should be put in place. Regarding the, we've called on parties that really to work together towards a scheme that fosters linguistic diversity, which includes the Irish language and Ulster Scots. And we feel the North-South Ministerial Council that they need to think outside the box effectively to explore new areas of cooperation that have mutual and economic social benefit. I think sometimes before I got involved in politics, a solicitor friend of mine said, when you go into many meetings, he said, the fight will never be what the fight's about. And it's something that I've kept very dear to myself for the last 15 years. And when you're in politics, the fight sometimes is never what the fight's about. It's not as clear cut. It's not black and white, there's grey areas. But I'd like to thank once again the colleagues here for the contributions. I'd also like to thank again the members of the committee put a lot of work into it, and I think that this report will certainly help point the way forward to the implementation of all the agreements, and I know it will be of benefit. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. I now ask the plenary to take note of the report of Committee A. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the members of the Committee A for their work in completing this report. The joint clerks will now arrange to send the report to the British and Irish government, so thank you very much. I now call on the Chairman of Committee C, Economic Committee, Jack Wall, to bring the Assembly up to date on the work of this committee. Thank you, Jack.
Co-chairs, the committee agreed at its meeting during the 47th plenary session in London that it would focus on youth unemployment for its next inquiry. High levels of youth unemployment are a concern across all BIPA jurisdictions, and we know that the British Irish Council has repeatedly highlighted this issue at its meetings. The committee is keen to include in its deliberation the EU aspect of efforts to address youth unemployment and disengagement, and we have already looked at some of the comparative data from across Europe. The first meeting of the inquiry was held in London on the 24th of February, and the committee received presentations from officials from the Department for Work and Pensions and representatives of the Centre for Economic and Social Inclusion and the Institute for Public Policy Research. At our meeting in Dublin last night, the committee considered and agreed a programme for the remainder of the inquiry. The committee has agreed to visit all BIPA jurisdictions in the course of this inquiry. In England, we have been invited to come and look at the progress being made by the City deal in Plymouth and the South West, which has a focus on reducing youth unemployment. Scottish members have suggested visiting Glasgow, where the City Council has implemented a guarantee for all young people leaving school, and Inverness, where we can look at the role of the voluntary sector in addressing youth disengagement. In Wales, we plan to visit an innovative further education provider, Coleg Gwent campus. We have been invited to spend some time at the Prince's Trust Centre in Belfast, and we also plan a number of visits here in Ireland. With the help of all members of the committee, we will continue to flesh out the programme to ensure that we cover all aspects of the issue: transition from education to employment, the role of businesses, apprenticeships, programmes, skills provisions, employment support, to ensure that we can provide a balanced, in-depth report to the Assembly. Provisionally, we will aim to complete this piece of work by the next Irish plenary session. We look forward to sharing ideas and experiences with colleagues on this topic that is so vital for the future of our young people and our economies. I would also like to thank Betty and Judith for their work in relation to preparing briefs, etc., for the members of the committee. And if we haven't got the full report for our plenary session in October, we will have a further progress report at that stage, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jack. Any contributions? Anybody? Oliver.
Well, can I first of all thank you very much indeed for that, and we very much welcoming everybody to Plymouth to see the City deal, and it's in return for £10 million, which the government are going to put into it. It's going to be creating hopefully 10,000 new jobs, and most certainly doing something about our high levels of youth unemployment as well. So thank you very much indeed for agreeing to come to see what is happening in the South West, and by that time hopefully you should be able to get there because we will have a railway line back in Upshur on Thursday.
Thank you, Oliver. Just like on the Select Committee, he never misses an opportunity to mention Plymouth. Pascal.
Co-chair, as a member of the committee, I just want to compliment Jack for his report, and also to say that in context different to what we were discussing earlier about the North, that youth unemployment is a very challenging subject, and the fact that we are going to take evidence from different areas of the UK and Ireland I think should help to inform the subsequent debate that will hopefully take place at this plenary, and that maybe we can come up with some practical solutions that can be forwarded to both governments. But I just wanted to put on record to compliment Jack on his report.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Just like Pascal, I'm really looking forward to our next inquiry. I'm particularly looking forward to welcoming the committee to Wales as well, and to an area of particularly high unemployment and deprivation in Coleg Gwent, in Blaenau Gwent, a region that I represent. I think our young people are our greatest asset, and we must never ever forget that. And it's important. We owe them, as an older generation, we owe them absolutely everything to ensure that they can remain within their communities and hopefully have a good life. And I look forward to the work of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. John.
Well, as colleagues know, I never miss an opportunity to mention Glasgow, so I'll take it as done. But this is a very challenging subject we've taken on, as we heard from the Minister earlier. It isn't just in the United Kingdom, it's in Ireland, and it isn't all over the place. At a time when we're asking people to work longer in their lives, it's having a knock-on effect to the young, in that the jobs that would normally have been left vacant aren't there anymore. So we do have a bigger challenge than we've ever had before. And I look forward to our inquiry, and if we can come up with any solutions, then hopefully both governments will take them on board.
Okay, have we anyone else? Yeah, sure.
Could I congratulate Jack on the report as well, and just speaking as part of the committee, as I said at the committee yesterday evening, I think it's very interesting, the visits. I think particularly the rural one is very interesting as well, because you know, when our rural young people can't get the jobs, they leave the area, whatever, it's leading to rural depopulation, as Senator Mooney talked about earlier, and that whole thing is having a serious effect on the social fabric of the whole rural area as well. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jack, would you like to sum up?
Well, Chair, I'd just like to thank the members for their contributions, and to say that we will, at the earliest opportunity, visit Plymouth. And I'm sure Oliver will make us very welcome there, and I'm sure Lindsay will in Wales as well. And I'm not sure, Lindsay is a great visitor to O'Donoghue's pub in Merrion Row. I don't know what he'll offer for us when we go to Wales, but we look forward to that, and again to say that this very important subject will be dealt with as expediently as possible. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Jack and all the members of the committee, thank you very much for your work so far on that report.